菜根谭。
Tending the roots of wisdom.
89. 舍己无处遗，施恩勿忘报。
89. Sacrifice without doubt. Bestow kindness without expecting repayment.
菜根谭原文：舍己无处其遗，处其遗，即所舍之志多愧矣。施人无择其报，择其报，并所施之心俱非矣。
白话文注解：一个人想要做出自我牺牲，就别再疑惑，不去计较个人的利害得失，心存计较，那就会使舍我的高风亮节蒙羞。一个人想要施恩惠给他人，就别指望回报，假如计较对方是否感恩图报，那就连你原来帮助人的动机也会变质。
89-1. If a person intends to make self-sacrifice, they shouldn't doubt it any longer. They should refrain from calculating personal gains and losses. Holding on to such calculations would tarnish the nobility of their selflessness. If a person wants to bestow kindness upon others, they shouldn't expect reciprocation. If they start considering whether the other party will be grateful and return the favor, even their original intention to help will become compromised. Translated by Bayandefu.
89-2. In sacrificing your self-interest, don't be indecisive, for personal aspiration dwells in that very place of indecision, a great shame. In granting a favor, don't hint at recompense, for that hint at recompense dwells in concert with the favor. Your largesse is nullified. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 89-3. In making a sacrifice, it is important not to have an indecisive mind. Such a mind can inflict a great deal of shame on your spirit of self-sacrifice. When bestowing alms, do not expect any return from the recipient, that would only spoil your original charitable heart. Translated by Paul White.
89-4. If a person wishes to make self-sacrifices, they should refrain from hesitation and avoid calculating personal gains and losses. If the mind is preoccupied with such calculations, it will tarnish the nobility of selflessness. Similarly, if a person intends to show kindness to others, they should not expect reciprocation. If one calculates whether the other party is grateful or repaying the favor, it may even distort the original motivation for helping others. Translated by Wen Lin.
90. 厚德以积福，一心以补牢，修道以解厄。
90. Accumulate blessings through virtue. Rest the mind to replenish energy. Cultivate the Tao to dispel misfortune.
菜根谭原文：天保我以福，无厚无德以压之；天劳我以行，无益无心以补之；天恶我以御，无亨无道以通之；天谴奈我何哉？
白话文注解：假如上天不给我福分，我就多做些善事来培养我的福分；假如上天用劳苦来困乏我，我就用安逸的心情来保养我疲惫的身体；假如上天用穷困来折磨我，我就用我学到的真理来打通困境。假如我能做到以上各点，上天还能把我怎么样呢？
90-1. If destiny does not grant me good fortune, I will engage in more virtuous deeds to cultivate it. If destiny wearies me with hardships, I will maintain a tranquil mindset to rejuvenate my tired body. If destiny tests me with poverty, I will use the truths I've learned to overcome adversity. If I can achieve all these points, what more can destiny do to me? Translated by Bayandefu.
90-2. Heaven endows me with little fortune, yet I greet it by increasing my virtue. Heaven burdens me with toil, yet I calm my mind to supplement it. Heaven blocks me from smooth encounters in life, yet I persevere in the Tao to clear the obstacles. What else can heaven have in store for me? Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 90-3. If heaven has not granted me enough happiness, I keep increasing my store of virtue to supplement this small portion. If heaven inflicts hardship and suffering upon me, I will seek ease of mind to make amends for it. If heaven sends disasters my way, I will try to pull through by pursuing the truth. So what, then, can heaven do to me? Translated by Paul White.
90-4. If heaven does not bestow blessings upon me, I will engage in more virtuous deeds to cultivate my blessings. If heaven wearies me with toil, I will use a tranquil mindset to rejuvenate my tired body. If heaven subjects me to poverty, I will use the truths I have learned to overcome adversity. If I can achieve these points, what more can heaven do to me? Translated by Wen Lin.
91. 天福无欲之真事，而祸必祸之简人。
91. The virtuous person with no desires attracts celestial blessings, while those who avoid calamity can avert calamity.
菜根谭原文：真是无心搅福，天即就无心处有其中；简人着意避祸，天即就着意中夺其破。可见天之机权最神，人之智巧合意。
白话文注解：一个志节坚贞不二的君子，并不刻意追求自己的福祉，可是上天却使他无意之间得到他没想得的福分。一个行为邪僻不正的小人，虽然用尽心机妄想逃避灾祸，可是上天却在他巧用心机时，来剥夺他的精神气力，使他蒙受灾祸。由此观之，上天对于权力的运用真可说是神奇无比，变化莫测，极具玄机。人类的智慧与心机，在上天面前实在是太逊色了，自作聪明有什么用呢？
91-1. A gentleman of unwavering integrity doesn't actively pursue personal blessings. Yet destiny often grants him unexpected blessings unintentionally. A petty person who behaves deviously and unscrupulously may cunningly try to evade misfortune, but destiny might strip away their mental strength when they least expect it, leading to their downfall. From this perspective, the way destiny employs its power is indeed remarkably mysterious and ever-changing. It possesses profound intricacies that render human wisdom and scheming quite inferior. In the face of destiny's complexities, human cleverness proves futile. Translated by Bayan Defu.
91-2. The principled person does not look around for good fortune, and heaven follows along with that lack of concern and bestows contentment of mind. The crafty person is on guard to ward off calamity, and heaven follows along with that vigilance and prompts a dreadful surprise. How marvelous the workings of heaven! How futile human cleverness. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 91-3. The man of steadfast morals does not pray for happiness, but heaven, without him knowing it, fulfills his heart's desires. The vicious man is most concerned with escaping calamities, but as he takes steps to do so, heaven deprives him of his senses and leaves him defenseless. From this, we can see that the ingenuity and power of heaven is unfathomable. What is the use of man's puny efforts and craftiness? Translated by Paul White.
91-4. A virtuous and steadfast gentleman, not deliberately pursuing his own well-being, may inadvertently receive blessings beyond his expectations from heaven. On the other hand, a crooked and unrighteous person, despite using all his cunning to evade calamities, may find heaven stripping him of his mental strength when he cleverly employs his schemes, leading him to suffer misfortunes. From this perspective, the use of power by heaven is truly mysterious, unpredictable, and full of profound secrets. Human wisdom and cunning appear quite inferior before heaven. What use is there in being too clever? Translated by Wen Lin.
92. 人生重结果，种田看收成。
92. In life, the results matter. When farming, one looks at the harvest.
菜根谭原文：生计晚景从良，一世之烟花无碍，真负白头失手，半生之清苦俱非。语云：看人只看后半截，真名言也。
白话文注解：歌妓、舞女、酒女等风尘女子，虽然半生以卖身卖笑为业，但是如果到了晚年能嫁人，那么她以前的放荡淫逸，并不妨碍她后来做一个贤妻良母。可是一个一生都重视贞操的劫富烈女，假如到了晚年由于耐不住空闺寂寞而失身的话，那她半生守寡所吃的苦就都付诸东流。俗谚说，评定一个人的功过得失，必须看他后半生的晚节。这是一句至理名言。
92-1. Courtesans, dancers, and other women of the pleasure district may have spent half their lives selling their bodies and smiles, but if they marry later in life, their previous promiscuity does not necessarily hinder them from becoming virtuous wives and mothers. However, for a lifelong virtuous woman or chaste lady, if she loses her chastity in later years due to the loneliness of an empty household, all the sacrifices she endured during her widowhood would be in vain. As the saying goes, to judge a person's merits and demerits, gains and losses, one must consider their conduct in the latter part of life. This is indeed a profoundly wise saying. Translated by Bayandefu.
92-2. If a singing girl is virtuous later on in accord with her circumstances, her earlier life of rouge and flowers will not matter. The faithful wife with white hair who lets down her guard nullifies half a life of chaste endeavor. The proverb reads, to judge a life, look just at the last half. A true saying indeed. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 92-3. If, in later life, a courtesan marries into a good family, her past life is no embarrassment. If a woman who has been upright and chaste all her life loses her personal integrity in her later years, all the virtue she stored up is thrown away. A proverb goes, when judging a man, look at his later years. This is truly perspicacious advice. Translated by Paul White.
92-4. Courtesans, dancers, and women associated with the pleasures of the world, despite spending half their lives in the trade of selling their bodies and smiles, if they marry in their later years, their previous licentious and indulgent behavior does not prevent them from becoming virtuous wives and mothers later on. However, for a chaste and virtuous woman who has valued her chastity all her life, if in her later years, due to an inability to endure the loneliness of an empty chamber, she loses her virtue, then all the hardships she endured as a widow in her earlier years will have been in vain. As the saying goes, to assess a person's merits and faults, gains and losses, one must look at their later years and conduct. This is a profound saying. Translated by Wen Lin.
93. 多种功德，勿贪权位。
93. Accumulate various merits, do not covet positions of power.
菜根谭原文：平民肯重德施惠，便是无畏的功效；士夫图贪权恃宠，竟成有觉的杞人。
白话文注解：一个普通老百姓，只要肯多积功德，广施恩惠，帮助他人，虽然没有一官半职，但是受到万人敬仰的程度，不亚于有爵位的公卿宰相。反之，一个达官贵人，假如一味贪图权势，邀官取宠，那么这种卑鄙行径，就如同一个领着爵禄却自荐为乞丐那般可耻，必遭唾弃。
93-1. An ordinary commoner, as long as they are willing to accumulate merits, extend kindness, and help others, may not hold official positions. Yet the admiration they receive from thousands can be comparable to that of titled officials. Conversely, a high-ranking official or aristocrat who solely pursues power, seeks favor through manipulation, engages in base actions, is as contemptible as someone bestowed with titles who degrades themselves to begging, and they are likely to face scorn. Translated by Bayandefu.
93-2. A commoner who is willing to cultivate virtue and dispense kindness is an untitled noble minister. A noble who covets power and wealth is a beggar with a title. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 93-3. If an ordinary person secretly stores up virtue and does charitable deeds, he is as influential as a duke or minister despite his lack of fame and position. If a noble grandee does nothing but seek greater patronage, power and wealth, he is nothing more than a beggar with a titled rank. Translated by Paul White.
93-4. An ordinary commoner, as long as they are willing to accumulate merit, show kindness, and help others, even without holding any official position, can earn the admiration of the masses comparable to that of a noble official. Conversely, a high-ranking official, if they are solely driven by a desire for power, seeking favor with officials, such despicable behavior is as shameful as a beggar who degrades themselves despite having a noble title and is sure to be scorned. Translated by Wen Lin.
94. 当念积累之难，常思倾覆之意。
94. Reflect on the difficulty of accumulation. Always mindful of the ease of downfall.
菜根谭原文：问祖宗之德泽，无身所想者是，当念其积累之难；问子孙之福祉，无身所宜者是，要思其倾覆之意。
白话文注解：若问我们的祖先给我们留下多少恩德，看看我们现在过的生活就知道了。要想到祖先积累了这些福德的不容易，若问我们的子孙将来是否能生活幸福，就必须掂量一下自己给后人留下的德泽有多少。要想到败家容易守成难。
94-1. If we were to ask how much benevolence our ancestors have left us, one only needs to observe the life we are currently living to understand the magnitude of it. It's essential to recognize the effort it took for our ancestors to accumulate such blessings. If we wonder whether our descendants will live a happy life in the future, we must weigh the virtues and kindness we leave behind for them. Remember that squandering is easy, but preserving is difficult. Translated by Bayandefu.
94-2. What are the blessings left to us by our ancestors? They are the lives we now enjoy, but we should bear in mind that they are the sum of difficulties when they were amassed. What are the blessings we leave our descendants? They are what our lives leave behind, but we should bear in mind how they can be waylaid and appended. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 94-3. When we consider that the merits which we benefit from today were earned by our forefathers, we should reflect on the difficulties they had to undergo in order to acquire those merits. When we wonder what happiness our descendants will enjoy, we should consider how easy it will be for them to squander the legacy we bequeath to them. Translated by Paul White.
94-4. If you ask how much grace and virtue our ancestors left for us, just look at the life we are living now to understand the significance of the blessings they accumulated. It's not easy to fathom the efforts our ancestors put into accumulating these virtues. If you wonder whether our descendants will live happily in the future, you must weigh how much moral influence and kindness you leave for the generations to come. It's essential to realize that squandering a family's wealth is easy, but preserving and passing down virtues is challenging. Translated by Wen Lin.
95. 只为伪君子，不怕真小人。
95. Fear only pseudo-gentlemen, have no fear of true villains.
菜根谭原文：君子而诈善，无益小人之肆恶；君子而改节，不及小人之自新。
白话文注解：欺世盗名的伪君子和恣意作恶的邪僻小人并没有什么区别，便捷操守的君子不如悔过自新的小人。
95-1. A pseudo-gentleman who deceives the world and steals reputation is no different from a wicked and malicious petty person. A gentleman who abandons principles and integrity is inferior to a petty person who repents and reforms their ways. Translated by Bayandefu.
95-2. Noble persons feigning goodness are no different from petty persons openly doing evil. Noble persons veering off the moral path are not as good as petty persons reforming themselves. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 95-3. A supposedly virtuous man who pretends to do good deeds is no better than a selfish scoundrel. When a virtuous man abandons his moral principles, he is not worth as much as a mean person who has turned over a new leaf. Translated by Paul White.
95-4. A hypocrite who deceives the world and steals fame is no different from a wicked and evil person. A gentleman who abandons his integrity is not better than a villain who repents and reforms. Translated by Wen Lin.
96. 春风解冻，和气消冰。
96. The spring breeze thaws, warmth dissolves the ice.
菜根谭原文：家人有过，不宜暴怒，不宜轻气。此事难言，借他是吟讽之。今日不悟，似来日再警之。如春风解冻，如和气消冰，才是家庭的行范。
白话文注解：如果家人犯了什么过错，不可以随便大发脾气责骂，更不可以用冷漠的态度进行冷战或轻言放弃。如果他所犯的错 你不好意思直说，可以婉言相劝，假借其他事情来暗示让他改正。如果没办法立刻使他悔悟，就要耐心等待时机，改日再殷劝告。态度要像和煦的春风，温暖的气流使寒冰消融，这才是家庭教育的正确方式。
96-1. If a family member makes a mistake, you should not easily lose your temper or scold them. Moreover, you should not resort to a cold war or give up with indifference. If you find it difficult to directly address their mistake, offer gentle advice and use indirect hints through other topics to encourage them to correct their behavior. If immediate realization is not possible, patiently wait for the right moment to kindly advise them another day. Your approach should be like a gentle spring breeze, where warm currents melt away the cold ice. This is indeed the correct way to conduct family education. Translated by Bayandefu.
96-2. Don't allow yourself to be violently angry and renounce a family member over a transgression. If it is a matter that is difficult to discuss, mention something else as a hint. If you can't reach an understanding at the time, wait for another day to take up your admonition. Let your harmonious spirit resolve the disorder like the spring thaw. It's like this in the ideal household. Translated by Robert Aitken and Daniel W. Wyckoff. 96-3. When a family member makes a mistake, one must not fly into a rage, nor should one gloss over the mistake as if nothing had happened. If it is difficult to thrash the matter out, one may use an analogy to enlighten the offender. If this still fails to smooth out the problem, it is acceptable to wait until another, and more suitable, time to admonish the transgressor. Just like the spring wind that thaws the frost and the zephyr that melts the ice, this is a model for home education. Translated by Paul White.
96-4. If a family member makes a mistake, it's not appropriate to lose your temper and blame them easily. It's even more important not to engage in cold wars or express indifference. If you find it difficult to directly point out their mistake, you can offer gentle advice and subtly suggest improvement through other means. If immediate understanding is not possible, patiently wait for the right moment and advise them earnestly. The attitude should be like a warm spring breeze, with a gentle flow that melts the cold ice. This is the correct approach to family education. Translated by Wen Lin.